What's the best way to respond when you hear about something evil that has happened? Man-made tragedies such as mass shootings, terrorist bombings, racial hatred. What should our response be? So I can think of 3 responses we might have when we hear about something evil happening. And let's look at all 3 of them. Now, it's pretty common to hear about tragedies and atrocities and to feel sad, feel angry. But this first response goes beyond just getting angry. It's when you hear about a tragedy or atrocity committed by somebody and you respond by hating the person. That's more than just getting angry. That's meeting hate with hate. And hating the person back is one response. Here's a second response you might have to hearing about a tragedy or atrocity. It's to overcome your emotions. And this is the response we see from the Buddha. In most pictures you'll see of the Buddha, he's pretty tough to read. In the picture you won't find him looking grumpy or even stern, yet the ever so slight smile and raised eyebrows don't quite rise to the level of happy either. What is he supposed to be feeling? The Buddha is hard to read because he was determined to respond to reality without strong feelings, one way or the other. His goal was not highs or lows, but equanimity, calmness, equilibrium, composure. But what about when something really tragic happened? Would catastrophe break the Buddha's poise? No, because he was convinced that all of life was impermanence and suffering. Neither the birth of a child nor the death of a spouse would change the universe's fundamental futility. We shouldn't grieve the bad, even as we shouldn't cling to the good, because it's all impermanent. In fact, one of the most destructive vices, according to Buddhism, is to feel strong negativity toward anything. Buddhism teaches that strong dislike or hatred, often called aversion, is one of the so-called 3 poisons, which give rise to all the problems in the universe. Because of the danger of strong negativity, Buddhism teaches all sorts of techniques for responding to an evil action in a cool-headed, passive way. For example, if someone does something evil to you, in order to avoid a negative response, you could reason that at some point in the endless cycle of past rebirths, that evildoer was once your mother. Thus, if the person was once your mother, then you can look past the wrong and feel dispassionate toward the evil. Another method, since everything that happens in this life is caused by previous actions, by karma, you can just chalk up an evildoer's actions to karma. That way you'll be less likely to get angry and experience negative emotions toward the person. Such equanimity toward evil might lower blood pressure and seem virtuous. Yet, what does it actually solve when it comes to the horrors of this world? Whereas the goal in Christianity is restoration of a fallen creation to its original goodness, the goal of Buddhism, as the Buddha taught it, is escape. The point is to escape into the unknowable nothingness of nirvana. As such, Buddhism teaches us to find peace through accepting the problem, but not to experience the peace that comes from trusting in a God who actually solves problems. So let's review. One response when you hear about a tragedy or atrocity is to hate the person. That's a pretty natural response. Another response is to overcome your emotions. That would be the path of the Buddha. Here's a third response. It's called fighting the real battle. When seeing his beloved creatures killing each other, God is no Buddhist. When the earth became filled with violence, Genesis 6 verse 6 says that God regretted that he had made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled. Grief became pent-up wrath until at last, Genesis 7 verse 11 says, the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of the heavens were open, and rain fell on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. The God of the Bible hates violence, according to Proverbs chapter 6, verse 16. That's why we find him always doing something about it. Always isn't hyperbole. The God of the Bible is always fighting evil. Here are some ways that God fights evil. God wrote his moral law on our hearts. See Romans 2, verse 15. And part of God's law written on our hearts is knowing that things like murder and violence are wrong. When there are evil and violent cultures, they find themselves under God's judgment from both inner rot, see Psalm 7 verse 16, and from God's wrath, see Jonah chapter 3 verse 8. God gave his people commandments telling us not to steal, not to kill, not to commit adultery. And then Jesus came and instituted an even stronger way to stop the advance of evil and violence. He did this by crafting a countercultural community who were taught to fight evil by doing good. Whereas it's the world's default reaction to hate those who hate them and hurt those who hurt them. Jesus trained his disciples to love their enemies, pray for those who persecute them. And as part of that countercultural community, ours is not a passive serenity that scrolls past headlines with disengagement. Neither is ours a knife-sharpening nervousness that grumbles about those people. Our job as followers of Jesus isn't to hate the person or even to overcome our emotions. Rather, ours is a courageous peacefulness that trusts in a God who hates horrific headlines and who calls us to do something about them. By fighting evil with good, we fight the real battle. By loving our enemies, by praying for those who persecute us, we fight the real battle. We're fighting loneliness with community. We're fighting envy with blessing. We're fighting revenge with grace. We're fighting us versus them hatred with neighborly love. Disciples of Jesus are on the front lines of battles which, if unengaged, can lead to alienation, desperation, and violence. So, as disciples of Jesus, when we see a tragedy or an atrocity, our job is not to hate the person. Our goal is not to overcome our emotions and feel dispassionately about the tragedy. Rather, our goal is to fight evil with good, responding to hatred with love. We believe that God is God. We trust him, and we know that because God is God, our fight isn't futile. With K-Paul Contact Mission, this is Daniel McCoy.